never given us clear sense of how anyone was harmed.
Then the bigger question, the one that you heard in that exchange and came up a lot at oral arguments today, is a notion of severability, which is, okay, let's say the mandate no longer has to die. Does the rest of the law have to die too? And there was a lot on that today. What's the argument the state of California and others are presenting to sever them, that they don't have to be together?
Well, it's a stretch first, as you said, to find that there was any harm, so they're standing. Then there's a stretch to say that a law that twice has gone before the Supreme Court all of a sudden now is unconstitutional. But then the real stretch, as you pointed out, is that the 2017 Congress, which passed a tax break bill, meant to reduce the tax on the individual mandate to zero, at the same time meant that it also wanted to get rid of pre-existing condition protections, get rid of the support for seniors on Medicare when it comes to prescription drugs, get rid of the support for 26-year-olds and under who stayed on their parents' health insurance. Nowhere in the debate or discussion or any language in the 2017 tax cut bill was there language about getting rid of all of the Affordable Care Act. So it's clear it's a stretch that they're trying to have this court sign on to.
It's so wild because it's not like we got to take out the Ouija board to figure out what the founders meant. Like, they're right there. We all watched them. You can go talk to Ron Johnson.
I should have had Mike Long and argue this and let you have some minutes of time to argue this.
It's not, this whole idea. Well, what did Congress mean? I don't know. Go talk. They're right there. Well, I mean, I guess the last question here is the sort of dog that caught the car question, right? Which is Republicans panicked that they were going to win this case and said, don't you worry your pretty little heads about it. And Amy Coney Barrett would never vote to a return. And the Solicitor General of Texas today saying, look, maybe if they strike it down, they could stay it pending some replacement. Like, what's the plan if you pull out all of America's healthcare regulations at once?
And there is no plan. And thank God when we have Joe Biden as president, we're going to improve on the Affordable Care Act, not try to dismantle it. And that's where we need to go. Americans right now under COVID need health care. Americans would have died without the Affordable Care Act. And a whole bunch of Americans who lost their job and with that job, their insurance, now have insurance through the Affordable Care Act. We need this. It's time to move on. We can't afford to risk this. This is about saving lives.
All right, Xavier Becerra, who is the Attorney General of the state of California, thanks for making a little time for us.
Thank you.
Ahead, coronavirus outbreaks are just raging across the country. We're running out of words to describe it. What it is like in the places where it's hardest hit, where hospitals are at capacity, and morgues. Morgues are filling up after this.
This is Olbermann versus Trump, and I'm not Trump. So how do we make sure we, the majority, don't have to go through crap like this again, where the minority torches democracy, installs a mentally impaired fascist, tries to subvert the election, and nearly destroys the world? Happily, there's an answer. Cash. I've been talking with the boys over in accounting, and this is their conclusion. We are not getting our money's worth. Not only are we, the majority, being ruled, tyrannized, and terrorized by a minority, but we are paying for them to do it to us. Freshman Representative-elect Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia, who believes in QAnon, but not face masks for COVID-19, who believes there is an Islamic invasion, but there's no excuse for Black Lives Matter, we paid for her. Georgia gets about $20 billion a year more from the federal government than it pays in. Freshman Representative-elect Ronnie Jackson, who as White House physician falsified Trump's first physical, then was accused of drinking on the job and overprescribing meds, we paid for him. Texas gets about $36 billion a year more from the federal government than it pays in. And freshman Representative-elect Madison Cawthorn, who 3 years ago rapturously celebrated his visit to Eagle's Nest, the home of Hitler's summer vacation, and said it was on his bucket list. We paid for him. North Carolina gets about $31 billion a year more from the federal government than it pays in. Oh, and Cawthorn celebrated his victory with this 3-word tweet. Cry more, lib. To clarify, Mr. Cawthorn, those are not our tears you are drinking. The list goes on endlessly. Re-elected Senator Lindsey Graham, bootlicker, South Carolina. We pay for South Carolina. It costs us $24 billion a year. Re-elected Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, slime of Kentucky. We pay for Kentucky. Costs us $27 billion a year. Florida, the elected and re-elected cretins of Florida, the moronic majority of Florida, we pay for Florida. Costs us $62 billion a year. There has not been a first-term Republican president elected in this country with a majority of the popular vote since George H.W. Bush in 1988. And yet in this election, we again witnessed a pendulum that only swings to the right and back to the middle and never to the left. We, the majority, are in whole or in part under the rule of the minority. The nation gets more diverse, the minority gets more racist. The nation gets more sympathetic, the minority gets more brutal. The nation gets more liberal, the minority gets more Hitler's summer vacation. The nation gets more sick with COVID-19. The minority gets more enamored of conspiracy theories and the political equivalent of witchcraft. But, the minority says, states' rights. We are the United States of America. This is the genius of our glorious government. No huge state can impose its will on the small ones. However, a consortium of the small ones is entitled to impose its will, its evil will, on the large ones. And its Hitler Youth can celebrate this by tweeting, "Cry more, libs, states' rights." Okay, we're going with states' rights. You heard that phrase recently? Of course. In another means by which the minority has oppressed and thwarted the majority, states' rights has been the historical revisionism applied to the Civil War. It wasn't about slavery or racism or brutality or the minority owning the majority. It was about states' rights. We're all for states' rights in Donald Trump's America. We here in the minority have all the rights, including one in which you majority losers are required to pay for us. We are not getting our money's worth here. Connecticut pays about $8 billion a year more than it gets back. Massachusetts, it's $9 billion. New Jersey, $12 billion. California, $14 billion. Illinois, $15 billion. New York, $22 billion. All so that the states that cannot fend for themselves can continue to, eat and send QAnon terror cultists and Donald Trump political streetwalkers and Eagle's Nest Nazis to the House and the Senate. This is no way to run a business. And didn't Trump get elected because he was such a great business?